Welcome to CSS for Librarians. Today we will be learning the basics of CSS. But first, we'll look at what you need to get started. Before learning CSS, you should have a basic knowledge of HTML. HTML, or Hypertext Markup Language, is a language used to create web pages. Some other things you will need to get started are an internet connection and a text editor to work in. If you are using a PC, some text editors you can use are Notepad, Notepad++, or Crimson Editor. If you are using a Mac, some text editors you can use are TextEdit or TextWrangler. Text editors are often software that come with your operating system when you buy your computer, or they are available for free download online. Today I will be using TextWrangler. We will now answer the questions, what is CSS, and as librarians, how will we use it? According to Wikipedia, Cascading Style Sheets, or CSS, is a style sheet language used to describe the presentation semantics, the look and formatting of a document written in a markup language. So what does that mean? For those of us who are visually oriented, here is an HTML page without CSS. And here is one where CSS is used. The difference lies in the look and formatting, or the design, if you will, of the web page. So how does CSS relate to us as librarians? Increasingly, librarians are called on to make changes or add content to the library's website or blog. A firm knowledge of CSS makes this possible. If you are able to perform such tasks in-house, you do not need to outsource and pay every time you need a change made to a web page. Now we will do a brief step-by-step demo to show the basics of CSS. The first step is to open your text editor, which in my case is TextWrangler. Now, go to w3schools.com/CSS. This site is a great source for further tutorials. Click on the CSS Examples Try It Yourself button. We are going to copy the HTML and CSS from this example and paste it into our text editor's document so we have some content to work with. I'm going to go ahead and paste this into my TextWrangler document. While HTML gives basic structure to a web page, with CSS we are able to define the appearance with a style sheet. This section at the bottom is the HTML. And this part up top is the CSS, or Cascading Style Sheet. A style sheet determines how certain elements will be displayed. By using CSS, we can format fonts, sizes, colors, page breaks, backgrounds, and more. To begin the CSS, we see the style tag. And then at the end of the CSS, the style tag is closed. And in between, we have tags describing selectors. CSS is broken up into tags, which are also known as declarations. Each tag ends with a semicolon and has two parts, the property such as color and the value such as red. And the property and value are separated by a colon. For example, here is a tag that defines heading 1's color as orange. Heading 1 is the selector, or the element the tag is describing, and here we see the selector H1 followed by the tag color, orange, semicolon. Color is the property and orange is the value, and the tag begins and ends with curly bracket. The curly brackets are on different lines, so it is easier to read, but this is not necessary. Now, if you want to have more than one declaration for an element, you can group them together like this. So to recap, by looking at this example, we see that heading 1 is being defined by a pair of tags. The first defines the color as orange, and the second defines the text alignment as center. When we look at the body selector, we see that the background color has been defined as a group of numbers. These numbers are a hexadecimal code for a specific color. I find that these are a great way to get a specific shade. Something like orange will give you a basic orange, but if we want a more specific orange, we can look up the hexadecimal code online and replace the word orange with a hexadecimal code for a more burnt orange shade, let's say. Now let's try that. In order to view your document in a browser window, we need to save it as a .html file, then open it with a browser such as Safari or Firefox. Let's see what our hexadecimal code for a more burnt orange looks like. Great, that's much better. Now to reopen your document, click on the file, then open with Text Wrangler or whatever text editor you are using. Now there are three types of selectors: type, ID, and class. A type selector is an existing HTML tag such as body or heading 1. We've been working with type selectors such as heading 1's color. However, ID and class selectors allow the user to define their own selectors. We can name them anything that makes sense to us. ID selectors specify a style for a single unique element. They are defined with a £sign. For example, say we wanted to have paragraph 1 be a different style than the others. We would use an ID selector. We would insert this ID selector in the head section. In order to view the change we just made, we can refresh the browser window. And we see our new centered red paragraph 1. A class selector defines a style for a group of elements. The class selector is most often used on several elements. It is defined with a period. For example, say you wanted both your paragraph and your heading to be bold. You would use a class selector. Now let's look at the change we made. Both heading 1 and the paragraph are now bold. There are three kinds of CSS: embedded, external, and inline. We have been working with embedded CSS, which is inserted in the head section. External CSS is a separate .css file that defines many pages. This is what would be used to define the overall look of a website that contains many HTML pages. And inline CSS is inserted directly next to the selector in the HTML line. As a rule, the closer the CSS tag to the selector, the more authority it has in defining its style. So for example, an inline CSS tag has more authority over the selector than the external CSS tag. This concludes our brief demo of CSS basics. I will leave you with a page of resources to continue the learning process. Thanks and good luck.